fellow moviegoers, and welcome back to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and these are my pets, George the Gorilla, Kahal the Dolphin, and Frank the Sea Turtle. That's right, folks, we're back once again. Now, in regards to what we're talking about this season, I figured that once again, I'm going to stray away from my comfort zone. Because this season, we're going to be talking about movies based on another form of entertainment people seem to be familiar with. Video games. Now, don't misunderstand me. I freaking love video games. I played a lot when I was a kid, and to this day, I still do. While I've established myself as a movie reviewer for the past few years, I do hope to dive into reviewing video games in the not-so-distant future. And what better way to start my video game reviews than by reviewing movies based on video games? For over 30 years, Hollywood has had a weird obsession with taking video games and bringing them to the big screen. Clearly, to them at least, if it works as a game, it must work as a feature-length movie on the big screen. Unfortunately, as you're going to see in the next 11 months, that's not exactly the case. In fact, a lot of them are pretty terrible. However, I'm going to give a lot of these the benefit of the doubt and try my best to be nice. So, where exactly does this collaboration between Hollywood and the video game industry begin? Well, let's take a look back at the first ever attempt to bring a video game to the big screen. And that would, of course, be the most popular video game character of all time, Mario. While he first appeared in arcade classics like the original Donkey Kong from 1981 as well as its sequel Donkey Kong Jr. and the original Mario Bros. Arcade game, it was Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Entertainment System that turned Mario into the pop culture icon that he is today. For those who don't know, after some disastrous titles released on the Atari system, the video game industry tanked, leading to stores flat out refusing to sell any games. However, leave it to the video game juggernaut Nintendo to take their latest and greatest console at the time, as well as their newest game, and market it as a toy in stores, leading it to break records all across the world. For nearly 40 years, Mario has had a presence on every single Nintendo console, and was even said to be more recognizable than freaking Mickey Mouse, who, may I remind you, has been around for almost 100 years. Yeah, as the old Nintendo commercials used to say, now you're playing with power. With such power, back in 1985, Mario soon ruled the freaking world. Throughout the late 80s and into the early 1990s, more games were made, a really bizarre TV series aired, there was an Ice Capade show, and even Universal marketed the third game in the series, Super Mario Bros. 3, in their movie, The Wizard. If that doesn't tell you how much Mario had impacted the general population, I don't know what will. In 1986, all the way back in Japan, Nintendo's homeland, an anime adaptation of the first game was released, titled Super Mario Bros. The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach. It's a very obscure piece of media that is very hard to find today. The only way I've ever been able to see it is through clips on YouTube. However, the movie rights to the character were soon sought after here in the United States, and several actors were up for the role of the Great Italian Plumber. That's right, A-list actors were interested in playing this character, including the likes of Dustin Hoffman and Tom Hanks. Danny DeVito was also considered, but he turned down the role. However, eventually the role landed in the palm of British actor Bob Hoskins, who's most famous for his role as Eddie in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was a big hit at the time. In the producer's chair were Jake Eberts and Roland Joffe, and in the director's chair were Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. By around 1991, the movie finally entered principal photography, but due to a ton of on-set drama, which consisted of constant rewrites, injuries, and overall chaotic energy, the final product was just barely put together. If you want to know more about the disastrous history behind this movie, please check out the Gaming Historian's video on the subject. He explains it better than I ever could, and it really shows a lot about how the production story of a movie can be better than the final product itself. The film arrived in theaters in May of 1993, and was a critical and box office failure. All of the actors attached to the film speak ill of it to this very day, and many cite it as one of the worst movies of all time. However, there are still some people who were fans of this bizarre little movie to the point that there is a website dedicated to it that talks all of things behind the scenes, as well as other nuggets of greatness. At the same time, 30 years later, a new film was released in 2023 to better critical and box office results. But that's a discussion for another time. Today, I answer the inevitable question. Is this film really that awful? Let's find out today. This is the 1993 adaptation of What the hell was that?
Hello there, Mr. CCS.
Mario? What are you doing here?
You are here talking about the first attempt at a Super Mario Bros. Movie, is that correct?
Yeah, what's it to you?
I want to join you. And I also want to make sure you let the quote fellow moviegoers know that this movie is a major disaster. Wahoo!
Mario, I think you misunderstand the situation. This is my show. I review movies here, and I definitely don't have time for pop culture characters like you to show up and beg for the spotlight.
Come on! For over 30 years, everyone has attacked this movie, and there wasn't a movie to unite all of them under my name until last spring. So with that, I want to help you review this movie. Please, Mr. CCS.
Mario, for the love of Thanos' ashes, please let me get back to the review.
Only if I help you.
Okay, fine. I'll let you join.
Wahoo! Thank you so much for playing my games.
This ain't no game, Mario. It's the live-action thrill ride that warmed the silver screen. This is the 1993 adaptation of Super Mario Bros.
Let's go!
Brooklyn plumbers Mario and Luigi, played by Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, get the shock of their lives when they discover a parallel world populated by the intelligent descendants of dinosaurs. It seems they weren't destroyed by a meteor millions of years ago, but hurled into another dimension, and now they have plans to rule over our world. It's up to our unlikely heroes to battle the evil King Koopa, played by Dennis Hopper, and his Goomba guards, and free the beautiful Princess Daisy, played by Samantha Mathis, while saving mankind in this adventure of a lifetime.
I know what you guys are thinking. What does this have to do with my games? Well, what do you have to say, Mr. CCS?
Well, Mario, I had the exact same question. What does this have to do with any of the games, past or present? Seriously, this movie is not a faithful adaptation. It's set in a gross dystopian world reminiscent of Star Wars or Blade Runner, more than the cutesy world of the Mushroom Kingdom. The colors are dull, the characters don't feel anything like their game counterparts, and worst of all, this was the reflection of the franchise on the big screen for 30 years. Now, having said all of that, I actually, unironically, kinda like this movie.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Mario, hold your fireballs that I know you're going to shoot at me. Well, yes, it does suck as an adaptation. You can tell that despite even the rough production, the actors and crew are making the most out of what they have here. No matter how miserable they may have been, it still ended up being, yes, a thrill ride and quite a blast. So, I'm going to talk about what really makes this suck as an adaptation, but not too bad as a movie.
Start the talking, because I'm still hoping to throw this fireball at you.
Don't worry, I don't think you will. Alright, so let's talk about our two leads, Mario and Luigi. In this film, they're played by British actor Bob Hoskins and Colombian actor John Leguizamo. Now, there's something a little weird about the bros in this movie, and that's the fact that they are very noticeably different in age. Bob Hoskins was around 50 years old when the camera started rolling on this movie, and John Leguizamo was around 30. That's a 20-year age gap. Now, it's always been established that Luigi is Mario's younger brother, but it's also been established that they are close in age, especially now because they've been twins since the 90s. So, with Hoskins and Leguizamo's age gap considered, the movie says that Mario practically raised Luigi. Now, in an earlier draft of the script, these two weren't supposed to be brothers, but that was changed later on, and I'm happy for that, because these two have always been brothers since 1983. As far as their actual characters go, Mario and Luigi didn't have defined characteristics yet. And because of that, they made up personalities for the movie. Mario is the confident ladies' man who's gruff and very much a New Yorker, while Luigi is the cool and hip younger brother who's very shy. They kinda work in that favor, but it's still not what I'm used to. Also, would you believe me if I said these two don't wear their iconic red and green overalls until the middle of the movie? Yeah, it's true, they don't. One of the most defining features of the characters were not featured very prominently in the movie. They're all over the marketing, but only in a bit of the movie? I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Anyways, I think both actors did a good job for what they were given, and I think Bob Hoskins looks a lot like Mario. But there's not much else to praise with them. How are the other characters? Well, I don't really have that many things to say about them. Good or bad. They're just kind of there. In this film, you have loose adaptations of Princess Daisy, who's played by Samantha Mathis, as mentioned earlier, Toad, played by Mojo Nixon, whom this video is dedicated to, by the way, rest in peace, and that's it. The rest of the side characters that are named are more references than anything. Daniela is a brown-haired, red dress-wearing lady that I think is this movie's adaptation of all things, Pauline from Donkey Kong. Yeah, that's something, I guess. There's this bouncer at a nightclub called Big Bertha who was a fish enemy in Super Mario Bros. 3. This Anthony Scapelli guy turned into a chimpanzee, which I guess is the closest thing to Donkey Kong in this movie. I guess, like I said. Koopa's former henchmen, Iggy and Spike, are only those characters by name. Iggy is one of the Koopalings, and Spike is a turtle with a blue mohawk, not Roger from Friends or that creepy dude from the Ferris Bueller's Day Off parking garage. I mean, with all due respect, Iggy and Spike are pretty funny, and these two have great chemistry on screen, and it's good to see them interact with one another, but I don't know how you turn unique enemies into Meathead and Bonehead. Also, Toad is turned into this movie's version of a Goomba, which I will definitely talk about very soon. And he's like that for the whole movie. As someone who despises Toad with a burning passion, even I thought that was a little too harsh on the little guy. Oh, and Yoshi's a baby dinosaur. Enough said. With that, let's move on to the villains. So before I talk about the main villain, I think it's important to talk about the army of baddies that are just as important. Here, we have what I assume is a dino-human hybrid akin to classic monster movies as this movie's version of a Goomba. The first enemy you see in any Mario game is a Goomba, and they are little brown mushroom things with big eyebrows. They're not this weird and kinda disturbing dino-human hybrid that has no mind whatsoever. God, even looking at these things gives me the creeps. These didn't give me nightmares as a kid, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave others nightmares. Yikes, what the hell am I supposed to think when looking at this thing? Whose idea was it to turn a simple enemy into this freaking abomination? Whoever did clearly had no real care for the source material, because I have no idea how this happened. Oh, also there's Lena, who's played by Fiona Shaw. I don't know who she's supposed to be. She's just kind of some psychotic lady who works under Koopa, and is nuts and power hungry. She dies in a very over-the-top fashion. Nothing more to say here. As far as President Koopa goes, Dennis Hopper hands it up in every single scene of this movie, and that's what makes it fun. However, I see way too much of a certain orange man in this character. Maybe it's the way he dresses, his speech patterns, or even his mannerisms. I just see way too much of that gross political guy that no one likes to talk about. Now, something I didn't notice until recently is that his arms are in the position of a T-Rex, because that's what he evolved from. I find that kind of cool. Also, there's this weird part where he kind of flirts with Daisy and turns into a weird lizard thing. Kind of gross, but moving on. By the end of the movie, he starts to look a lot more reptilian and also turns into this giant Tyrannosaurus hybrid, which is the closest thing to a live-action Bowser I think any of us will get. Ever. So President Koopa is a very cheesy villain of the time, and he doesn't hold up well at all, but he's still fun to watch. Overall, I think the characters would be great if they weren't adaptations of the characters we all know and love from the video games. But beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Now, let's move on to the effects. I think the practical effects look really great, especially for 1993. The environments of Dino Hatton are really well designed, with the extra added detail of fungus covering the streets and buildings being super neat. I also love Koopa's Tower, which is a dark reflection of the original World Trade Center in New York. The animatronic work is also pretty awesome. The Goomba suits and Yoshi look amazing. This is very advanced animatronic work, and I freaking love how good it looks. Now, the VFX, on the other hand, looks very dated. I don't blame the movie for this. This is from an independent studio, and those movies are very rarely containing finished VFX. But I would be lying if I said this movie aged well in the VFX department. It doesn't help that Jurassic Park came out the same summer, and that movie looks great. Now, let's move on to the music. Surprisingly, the score was composed by Alan Silvestri. I think he did a great job with the movie he was given, but at the same time, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like Mario to me. Like, at all. Yeah, they play the main theme, but no other themes from the games are used. It's purely an original score afterwards, and that kinda sucks. Silvestri is a great composer, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't miss the classic music from the games. Finally, we have the references. And they're very minor per se. Sure, you have the obvious ones, but they are not all created equal. These major references include the red and green outfits for the bros, Daisy wearing a purple dress, which I assume is to be reminiscent of Peach's dress, because Daisy wears orange. The devolution guns used throughout the movie are NES Super Scopes, Toad's name is dropped, Yoshi is featured, Big Bertha's name is dropped, there are Bob-ombs, Goombas, and the title is dropped at the end. As far as lesser references go, the things that power up the boots that help the brothers jump are Bonsai Bills. There's a place called the Boom Boom Bar, which is a reference to Boom Boom. And the boots are called Thwomp Stompers, which is a reference to Thwomps. Also, when the boots are powered up, they make a sound that is directly from the game whenever you touch an enemy. Daniela, as stated earlier, is supposed to resemble Pauline. I think Scapelli turning into a chimpanzee could be the Donkey Kong reference as stated earlier, but that's about it. I have no more references to talk about. And I have nothing else to really say about this movie. This movie is a textbook example of how not to do an adaptation, and that's okay. It's its own thing, and I appreciate that aspect of it. But I am still kinda let down, since we have the much better and far more faithful adaptation that came out last year, and was the complete opposite in regards to my feelings, but we'll get there a lot later down the road. Overall, I think I'm gonna give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. It's good on its own, but far from good as an adaptation. Well, I think we've gotten both our points across. How about I call you up just in case I ever need you?
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much for playing my games.
Man, I need a new job. Whatever the case may be, if you've seen this very obscure little movie, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, with all of that said and done, I'm in for one crappy season with a bunch of crappy movies. However, maybe there are some gems hidden there. However, I know that because I have you. I'll make it through this season in no time. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week. Man, it is good to be back.